Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar. We're going to give everyone about 2 more minutes before we get started. While we're waiting, I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Adam Larson, and I have the privilege of being the Director of Educational Strategy for Schoology. My main role in the company is to understand users like you, what your needs are, the goals that you have, and what's going to make you successful. I try to use my more than 12 years of experience from instructor to institutional leader to speak right to the issues that matter, and I hope the next 45 minutes or so will be impactful. Thankfully, though, I'm not alone in this endeavor. In fact, the true focus of this webinar is going to be about a surprising journey our 2 guest speakers went on to transform learning at their institution. At this time, I want to introduce Justin Harbin and William Illingworth. Justin, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, sure. My name is Justin Harbin, and I'm an assistant professor and instructional designer at Lancaster Bible College, and I teach in our social studies education and as well design online courses and lead professional development.
Awesome. William, can you introduce yourself?
Hey everybody, this is William. I am an instructional technologist and systems administrator. I do a lot of the tech side to support Justin and his side of the department. As a designer and a technologist, we kind of work hand in hand. Mostly I do a lot of teaching teachers how to teach with technology. So that's kind of the shtick for me.
Thanks, guys. I know a lot of people who are attending this webinar today have very similar backgrounds to yourself. And again, I'm really glad that you were able to join me today to have this conversation. So for those of you just joining, thank you for being here. Our webinar, Leveling Up, is about a surprising journey that Justin and Will from Lancaster Bible College went on. It started with just a desire to manage digital learning in a better way, but instead they were able to transform it in a significant way. To set the stage, we'll be covering the challenge they faced early on, the switch that was necessary, the key steps that made them successful, and then looking back, what 5 ways have they leveled up and how you can too. Now, while we're talking, feel free to use the GoToWebinar question area to submit questions. We'll try to get to those periodically as we go through the webinar, but in case we can't answer them in our allotted time, we have time specifically at the end to answer questions too. So with that said, let's go and begin. So first we start with the challenge. Could you guys kind of discuss the situation you found yourselves in when you started your positions there at Lancaster Bible College?
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So when I was hired, this is Will, I was hired as a department assistant, and some of the reasons that I was brought in were to really help with our previous learning management system to fill in the gap for where, creating courses, building shells, distributing course evaluations. It was a lot of manual work, and I was dealing with some hundreds of courses at a time. And a lot of that was just kind of committing myself to tech support. It was working with the LMS, making sure it kept working, not really helping the professors in any educational method, but just kind of, okay, something's broken, let's fix it, or I need more courses, can I get those? Yep, gotcha. And that kind of was the beginning for me in the office, was just kind of, I want to say trained monkey, not to be too crass or anything, but that's what I was there to do, And our old LMS, another component of that was it was more like a junk drawer. I hate to say that, but, as our professors were putting content out there, it was a lot of the PDFs, and that makes me think of the recent blog that Schoology put up about, taking the PDF to the next level or going beyond that. But that was really where I started. You Justin?
Yeah, so I came from the K-12 world, teaching high school, and I was really kind of growing a passion to continue my own teaching career, but also to invest in others teaching and help them teach more effectively. And so looked like a position like that, so I moved my family across the state, and ready to start this new adventure. And I got here and kind of had a bit of a crisis, to be honest, because here I am a couple months into it, and I'm fixing an LMS, or I'm helping people. I'm learning how to use it, and then helping people fix it. And I don't consider myself a techie by nature. I can work with it, but I really had some problems. So I thought, I want to help people teach. I could care less about fixing quiz settings, because there's so many things that could have gone wrong. It's just a very complex LMS. So for me, it caused significant problems. And I really was eager to get past that to talk about actual pedagogy through those digital means.
And that's really like early on. We were both hired in 2014, and we kind of had a pretty solid crew at that time. We just realized we were limited by our LMS. We did not have the bandwidth to do more than just fix courses, if that works, if you get that mentality.
Right. It's interesting. I even thinking about the whole process of leveling up. So we were trying to find some images, and the image for this one, this man who's trying to walk up the steps, but he realizes he's just spinning in circles. I think your story is something that I hear as I work with higher ed clients, around the world, really, that their old LMSs was just really limiting them into what they wanted to do, because they felt like they were spinning their wheels so much just trying to make it work that they weren't able to get to some of the things that they were really excited about. Justin, I especially think about you, moving your whole family to really try to impact education, and you finding yourself kind of being let down almost by what you found yourself in.
Yeah, and we as a team really came together. Just at that time we had two other gentlemen with us on the team, and the four of us really bonded together in that hard time, saying, okay, how are we going to do this? How are we going to get through? And I don't know. I feel like for me it was part of that relationship that we had as coworkers to get through that helped. But of course, the technology was soon changing, and that was a really big important step for us.
Yeah, and I know in our previous conversation we kind of really talked about this statement that technology can limit or expand your opportunities. Like, how would you guys relate to that particular statement?
Well, in our previous LMS, it was certainly limiting us because it was complex enough. It could do a lot of things, but even the most menial features were complex enough where many of our faculty were just scared of using it, and I don't really blame them. It was the technological barriers were so high. It was really hard for them to even begin to imagine using it for pedagogical purposes.
Yep.
And so for us, that had to be addressed. And even it was not mobile friendly. That was a concern for us as we look to expand. We have some international initiatives that where we know in some countries where the primary device is going to be a mobile device, and so it had to be mobile friendly. And our LMS at the time just either wasn't going to do it, or what was going to happen was going to cost us inordinate amounts of money that we knew was not worth it. So that was kind of our initial kick in the pants to start to look elsewhere.
And our faculty at that time were really caught up in the idea of, well, the few that were using it, I can't say, and they may hear this, so forgive me, but they can't say they were using it well. They were trying to do certain kinds of gymnastics to accommodate for how difficult the system was, that it wasn't producing the results they were really looking for. They couldn't create community. They couldn't, foster good learning in those experiences. They couldn't do synchronous experiences. They were just caught in, okay, here's my PDFs, here's my PowerPoints, take this quiz, I'll see you on Tuesday. It was more like a doctor's prescription than education.
I think the thing becomes too is that Will and Justin, you guys are really great users. You have a great story, and it was almost like you could see where you wanted to go, but it was the task, even as you were saying, Will, the amount of effort that would have to be spent to get there was almost insurmountable. And that's what really led you guys to kind of the switch, which is switching over to Schoology. Can you tell a little about, obviously this webinar is not about Schoology's, the best out there, even though I agree with that. It's more about your story, but tell us a little bit about that switch and your experience there.
Well, Adam, it was a cold and dark November 2014 when we started. We just in the office, like I mentioned before, there's four of us. Our director kind of set each of us up as champions to go and find a different LMS, learn it, and then bring it back to the group and say, okay, this is my suggestion. Schoology was the clear winner across what we championed, and really what it came down to was we said, oftentimes change happens too slowly and it becomes more drawn out than it needs to be, and it can be very tough when you're maybe have experienced a number of other changes as well to add one more, and so if you drag it out, it just hurts. It's just a bleeding wound. We said, okay, we're going to do this between semesters. So we left Justin's laughing. We left the semester in December, the students, with one LMS, and they came back 3.5, 4 weeks later to a completely new LMS, and we had migrated everything over and had prepped all of the new classes and had everything ready to go for our professors to start. And so the only people that even knew it was happening were the professors. That was tough. That was tough, logistically.
Yeah, it was painful. I don't know that I would fully recommend it. But on the positive side,
yep.
Immediate feedback from both faculty and students were, wow, this is so easy to use. We unveiled the faculty through a whole bunch of different workshops. Through students, we had like a gamified experience. The first day we did it where they had to do some scavenger hunts and things like that. And our goal was to kind of train them on the LMS and the process. And past that, we were kind of off and rolling. It was the LMS is that easy to use. And for me, what was, after a couple of months after we made the switch, it was becoming evident that finally my job became more about pedagogy than it was tech support, and that was amazing for me.
And that was a semester's time probably, because it was not an immediate silver bullet. It didn't fix it, it became easier, and so more people attempted to use it. That was the benefit. Immediately, more people tried. I know a number of faculty who literally would not before, and they said, this looks easy. But what did happen was they kept using it like Moodle. They kept using it like our old LMS, and going forward with that same junk drawer mentality, and kind of, you'd go into some classes and it would just be a list of 100 documents. And I'm like, this isn't working for anyone, even you as the professor, so what are we doing here? And it was just that evaluation time where, okay, we got up off the ground running. Much of my job was freed up. I no longer, because we could sync it with our SIS and a whole bunch of other stuff, I no longer had to spend my time manually creating 300 to 400 courses a semester. They were made like that at midnight or noon every day with our sync. So I got so much free time, which was great. And Justin, he's saying he got this encouragement, this enablement to say, okay, I'm going to change my methodology. We're not here just to fix broken tech. We're here to fix education.
What was also inspiring about your story is that there are so many institutions that are hesitant to make a switch because of the critical nature of the LMS, right, in the learning landscape, that it's such a pivotal part of that instructional process, and it's hard for them to realize the overall benefits of a platform like Schoology, right, where now it changes the whole kind of dynamic. I really even love how you both kind of have said that, it changed what your overall position was, because now you're focused on the pedagogy, you're focused on the teaching practices of the instructors, and not on all the various tasks that you had to do before.
Yep.
That's interesting. One of the things too that you mentioned, Will, is this whole idea that it's not a silver bullet. And specifically instructors trying to use Schoology like they would have used Moodle. Can you talk a little bit more about that aspect?
Sure. With Moodle, professors were trying to use it like a junk drawer, kind of a little bit for their grade books, and some of them that were better with that were trying to, like I mentioned before, I call it grading gymnastics. They would have every third assignment be dropped if a student did something on Thursday at 2 p.m. when it was snowing outside. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Why are we grading like this? And so as we move forward into Schoology, we were able to kind of evaluate those practices and work with people and to say, okay, hey, John, I see you have this grade book set up. We're at the end of the semester here. I know you felt like the pains of switch, but what do you think about the fall? What can we do to maybe trim some of these ideas out of your grade book and simplify it? And the conversation kind of became more about, too, making it easier for him, and it communicated better to his students, because the consistent response to Schoology from the students has been, this is better. This is cleaner. This is more direct. I can follow the calendar. I can check my grades when I want to. They didn't even know how to do that previously in our old LMS. So, working with that John, for a sense, he just was able to say, okay, let's trim this. Let's take care of that in the grade book alone. making sure that his categories were set in one setup, or with total points and percentages, making sure that he was kind of limiting his extra credit to say, is it something that they need to be given throughout the semester, or is it something that they can hold on to? Extra credit, maybe just give it at the end of the semester. A lot of different ways. We're just starting to evaluate those things that in Moodle, okay, they did have some features that automated those things. But again, why are you giving that student extra credit on the third day of a Thursday on a snowy 2 p.m.? It doesn't make any sense. It didn't have any value. Besides that, organization. I'll tell you, one of the number one things I do, I'm actually a trainer for Schoology on the outside as well. And when I work with a new company that's kind of looking at organization, it's the first steps with Schoology 101, folders. Folders is a fantastic idea. It is a #1 organizational tool. And with Moodle, everything was just a linear page. You started at week 1 and you had to scroll all the way to the bottom, and we called that the scroll of death. It killed students because by the last week, they're not wanting to scroll down anymore to get to their study notes. So if we look at those organization methods, it really improves that learning experience.
And Will, just to let you know, you must have struck a chord there. I'm getting a couple comments from our audience about that feeling as well.
Excellent.
It's interesting. So, I mean, and that was getting a little bit into the weeds, but I really appreciate the insight. You had also some key steps that you guys took to help with that switch process. And I wanted you guys to spend a little time just talking about these things, some of these key steps.
Yeah, so one of these first steps, I'll start on the left-hand side there. Enlisting early adopters is important for us. Who are those people who are willing to be our cheerleaders? Whether they were, kind of faculty friends that we had that were kind of close to our office for whatever reason, and those who are willing to really say, hey guys, I'm using Schoology now, and I wasn't using our old LMS, and this thing really works. That's a powerful piece to find those stakeholders who are willing to take risks, who are willing to support your endeavors elsewhere and to cross disciplinary boundaries. That's a big thing in higher ed. We kind of have silos across our different disciplines across campus. And people who are willing to cross those boundaries and say, hey, this is really working for me. That is a powerful piece that has helped us even at the stage we are now.
And that component, then, even just the early adopters, initiated a cultural shift. Like that's why we kind of have these in 3 sections here. You got the left, middle, and far right. The left-hand side was just the beginning for us. We got those early adopters involved, and the adopters were interested not in how do I make sure the settings work, but they were interested in how do I do good collaborative online learning? How do I, manage my digital classroom? I think that's a big area that I like to speak with faculty on, is how do you manage your digital classroom? That's attendance, grades, messaging, etc. So there was this whole cultural shift, and that was the beginning for us. And after that first semester, we really felt like, yes, we've got this opportunity here to make a shift. And I think that kind of bleeds into, our next steps.
I would even say, in addition, Will, to a cultural shift, we actually changed the name of our office. We were formerly the Office of Online Education, and we rebranded as the Office of Digital Learning. Not only to keep current with trends in the market, I think, but as well to communicate that what we do is about pedagogy and thinking of online or blended learning. We can't think of it as bolting on technology to what we're already doing, or just trying to find some shiny new tech tool. It's about enhancing student learning and enhancing those opportunities. So we made a shift in our institution here. It's something I think many higher education institutions are seeing, that pedagogy is what needs to drive the technology choices, and it's taken us some time, but we are viewed that way by our faculty now. We're leading professional development initiatives that are, before it was, here's how you set up a quiz, and we had to spend an hour telling you, working through how to do that. This last summer, we presented six seminars to our faculty, and almost all of them were on educational theory and application in the classroom. It was pedagogy, because we didn't have to worry about those technological hurdles. So it's been a really meaningful culture shift for us.
And that equipped us for that second movement, where while we started with a wide base, I like to say it's the shotgun approach, get as much out there as possible. That equipped us and set the foundation for us now to get into the weeds. We are in a place where if I need to sit down with a professor about some settings, I'm always co-opting it to say, this is great, thanks for reaching out to me, let's get talking and started. Why do you want to use this? Let's look at this tool. Maybe there's another third-party tool we can integrate instead of just a discussion, or into the discussion to kind of complement that experience. And so, that first section, that was just us getting started, us changing. This second section was like the practical kind of bleed out of that, the things that we started to accomplish, documentation and trainings. And then the last section here is really kind of where we are. We just had a conference in the Lancaster County called Lancaster Learns, and we had James Lang come and speak, and he wrote this book on small teaching, and it was just really helpful to hear some of the things he's talking about. As instructors, it's daunting to touch Schoology. Let's get you signed on to Schoology, use all of Schoology. We've kind of retired that mentality. Let's get you started with your grade book. Let's start you with something small, just like James is approaching. If I got somebody in Schoology and maybe they're doing some of the digital classroom management stuff, now let's get you starting with discussions. Let's have you use discussions regularly and well and in different ways. And I think that leads us, Justin, where we are with kind of this last portion of celebrating.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a key piece of innovation is that faculty feel they have the capabilities to take that step. It can be really risky for some faculty. It depends on your institutional culture, but especially in higher ed, there's this culture of my professor evaluations need to be high. I need to get tenure. So there's a lot of pressure. So to take a risk like this can be a kind of a scary thing. And so identifying just little things to build their confidence, and they start to see it work, and they get excited, and they want to try new things. That's been huge for us. So what we really tried to do intentionally, and we've got some plans to expand this, is celebrating their successes in public ways. And we've been starting to highlight through many interviews we're doing around campus and sending those out to all faculty, say, hey, here's one of your colleagues. They have the same crazy workload you do, and all that sort of thing. And look what they're doing. And they're doing some outstanding work. You could do this too. That's been a really helpful piece for us as well to gain more buy-in from the faculty.
Yep, create the community.
Yeah. I think what's also, again, working with a lot of different higher ed institutions, I think what always takes them by most surprise is the aspect of Schoology being able to come in and really having a cultural shift on the overall education, right? Like so many times the learning management system is a necessary component to house your PDFs or to do things like that. And when they actually see teaching practices starting to change, it really is an amazing thing. And speaking of that, Mike actually asked a question was wondering if there would be some more specific things to talk about specifically around the how Schoology is making the shift in the pedagogy. Just know, Mike, we're actually going to be getting into a couple of those ways that Lancaster is leveling up, and we're going to be speaking specifically around a topic of social learning, which I think will kind of meet that specific need. But for the sake of time, let's go ahead and move on to our the main meat and potatoes of the webinar, which was 5 ways that you guys are really leveling up there in Lancaster. And obviously this is something that they told me too, right? This is a work in progress. They haven't reached the mountaintop yet, but they're getting closer. And they wanted to be able to share their successes with the rest of you. Hopefully, as we're going through these points, you can be thinking specifically as an audience member of how those can relate to you, and especially specifically if you have questions, please feel free to ask those as we go. But at this point, I do want to turn it back over to you, Justin and Will, just so they can talk through these 5 various ways.
Yeah, so our number one step here, our first step, is empowering yourself to empower others. And one of the first things that comes to mind here is we're a relatively small institution, and about 2,000 students, so in higher ed it's on the smaller end, and our office is quite small, more specifically. And that's not necessarily, that's a common thread, I think, for many institutions. And so one of the things we've had to look at is how do we affect the most change with a small crew. We don't have many dollars to throw at some of these things. So how do we maximize that? And so we've been trying to, at this stage, create as many sort of resources and supports that empower faculty to take action on their own. So some of that's looked like a monthly newsletter. Will and I started doing a video podcast, which includes interviews, how-to tips. You know, as Schoology releases new features, we highlight those, do a brief training, throw a bit of humor in there from time to time to keep it light. Just trying to produce just-in-time resources. You know, anything we can do to maximize our impact for our faculty, so they don't need to necessarily come and find one of us and sit down for an hour and figure out how to do something. That we're ready for that. We're willing to do that. But we found that empowering faculty to do these things on their own has been a really helpful approach for us, being so small.
And we kind of learned that by experiencing it. When we came on to Schoology, there was enough, you know, consistent implementation support to get us going. But Justin and I quickly connected with the Twitter community. With, you know, Justin went the first year to Schoology Next, and I went the second year. Like, it was very helpful for us just to get involved and get empowered ourselves. And so what did we do? We reached out to the Schoology Exchange and we read the blogs. We looked into Schoology supports documentation and caught up on the information. We looked into the research in the sciences, the research sciences on education and pedagogy shifting, and where are we today as a industry. We did that, and it's worked for us as we've improved and as we've gained a new perspective. And so that's our mentality. We're putting that back out to our faculty, and there's some cool initiatives that we'll talk to, I think, more with levels 4 and 5 that we're doing here to get our faculty reproducing that, not just even pushing it out to them, which is helpful. You know, it's creating that wide base, but you gotta get them to take it on and own it.
I'll say too, just to give you a couple for instances, even to speak to Mike's question. We've got professors, especially with the upgraded assignment tool that is recently upgraded here for us. We have professors that are providing better feedback because now they've seen, oh, I can get feedback through Schoology. It's allowed us to speak and to say, well, hey, there's good ways to give feedback. It is a wonderful opportunity for this and for that, and so we have had massive improvement. And our students are just buzzing about it. That our professors are giving extensive, personalized feedback, helping the students think about their own thinking. And so even just using the tools we have within the assignment grader, as well for myself, and this is an experience a number of professors have used. I've used Schoology's updates feature to post other articles, even funny YouTube videos I find that are related to class, post those in the updates in between classes. So this is an on-campus course, by the way, that I had this semester, and I've had a number of students come up to me and say, Professor Hartman, this is amazing. Like, we feel like you're extending the conversation outside of the classroom. That learning just doesn't happen when we're together. They're finding things, which is really exciting to me. They're finding things that relate to class that may be humorous, or that may just be a good article or something, and they're extending our conversation. That has been incredibly valuable. And we often then take time at the beginning of next class to talk about that, to discuss, hey, how did that make you think differently about this, or what have you?
One of our early adopters as well, she works in our social work department, and so one of her activities that she's had her students do is to kind of experience what it is to live on welfare and things like that. She says each of them take X amount of dollars. It's like $1.50 or $2. I forget the exact amount. You have to go out for a day and try and live on that much money. And so that's a great learning experience. And we got to catch up with her and hear about that. And we said, hey, how are you documenting that? She goes, oh, they write something down and hand it to me in class. I said, what about using a media album? Why don't you send them out there with their phone so that they have to document the experience and take photos of what they're buying and show what their meals were that day, and maybe even use that to reflect on what their experience is, how they're feeling about that process of going through that. So here she's flipping the classroom in many ways. She's putting them into situated learning experiences, but we're also equipping her with Schoology to kind of take that and take it to another level, bring some media to it, and connect the students in a way that they want to engage with it.
And I think what you said there at the end really just summarizes this so well for me, that it's what essentially you're doing is that you're not creating hoops that you're wanting people to jump through. You're providing the opportunities that these users have always wanted. Yep. That wasn't available before. Yeah. Let's move on to the second one for the sake of time. Why don't you go ahead and start with this one?
All right, so giving more so students expect more. As we have exit interviews with students, with seniors, anecdotally, almost every other day, we're hearing from students or through professors or directly that as some professors have been using Schoology in amazing ways, they're starting to say, "This is awesome. Why aren't my other professors doing it?" Mm-hmm. And so we're starting to see a shift in the culture of because the students are starting to expect more, and they're realizing all that this entails for them. This is an amazing enhancement to their education. They are starting to demand it from other professors who have been slow to adopt, and it's been a positive thing. I don't mean to say that negatively, but it has helped us to bring along some of those who are kind of lagging behind a bit, and it's helped them to see, oh wow, I'm not with the times, my colleagues are doing this. I need to step up. So
I taught a class at one point, and one of the cool experiences for me with Schoology is that I've been both a student and a teacher and an admin in it. I took some classes at the grad level from our institution, and I got to experience it that way, and then I taught in it, and etc. When I taught in it, I at the mid-semester took PDF examples of the students' grade reports at that time and emailed it to them ahead of time. Just said, hey, this is where you're at. I know you can access this every day, but I want you just to have that direct communication. Here's an opportunity. Do you feel like you're down on something that you want to improve? Do you feel like you're doing well and you want to talk about how that's working for you? I created that conversation with them, and the students said, several of them replied, none of my professors do this. This is awesome. Thank you for reaching out at the mid-semester and making that touch point with me. And that wasn't about Schoology. That was about the way that I was approaching my classroom and being willing to teach them. And that's raising the bar for the rest of their faculty at LBC. One of the other ways, though, that I really like, one of the anecdotes that's kind of come through here for us, is that Schoology is becoming, I'd like to say, like a living syllabus. For our faculty members who are using it, full time, if you will, the students very rarely go back to the syllabus anymore when they're going in their learning experience. They keep up with we call it the eCampus. They keep up with their eCampus course page because that they know that the due dates are up to date. They know that the assignments that have been dropped are good and the ones that have been added are there, right? Things that used to happen, with the syllabus, had to print 16 copies for all your students every 2 or 3 weeks with an update to the schedule or whatever. The students just expect it to happen in their course page. They expect the calendar to be correct. They expect the grades to be correct. And when they reach out and there's an issue, the faculty are immediately willing to remedy that. They recognize that there's a value of that relationship, that if they keep up their end, the students are more willing to continue and they're encouraged by that relationship. So we're really, you see some of the bullet points, we're elevating those expectations. That's great. The learning experiences are becoming something that the students are interested in and want to have. We never had a student talk to us about how good Moodle was. We were walking the campus as much then as we were now, but students will stop us and say, thanks for what you do with Schoology. Or I'm so thankful for that. I was talking to a student just this morning. We had a great conversation, never met him before. He says, oh, I'd like to catch up with you. I'll catch you on eCampus, I said. And he was like, oh yeah, cool, see you later. So I messaged him, and it's just that way that we're integrating it into our community.
Another question about this too that always comes to my mind is, the students that are coming to our higher ed institutions are drastically changing, right? Just say within the last 5 or 10 years, I mean, the amount of technology that they have access to, the experiences that they're actually having in the K-12 world is getting more and more leveraging that technology. I mean, how have you seen that impact your campuses with this switch too?
I would say most of it, a lot of it came as far as seeing a significant shift, for me, a lot of it came over this time when we switched to Schoology a couple years ago. Because our previous LMS was complex enough even for students to use. It wasn't user-friendly enough for them to be comfortable with. I don't recall having a conversation with a student where they said, yeah, I use that thing all the time, and it's second nature. Whereas with Schoology or Red Facebook, we branded ours red with our school colors. They call it Red Facebook at first. They're ready to roll. And so as an instructor who's taught in both LMSs, it is night and day the amount of touches my students are making in the LMS and the ways they're choosing to communicate. They primarily work through messaging. They don't even email me anymore primarily. So.
All right, so the next one, I know, Justin, you talked about this in some of our previous conversations, was about encouraging social learning. Can you talk a little bit about this one?
Yeah, so social learning is a major priority for us. We have a wonderful community on our campus. We're known for that. We're drawing students because of it to our undergraduate experience, and so that was a high priority for us. There's a faith-based institution. It's also compatible and empowered by learning science as well. We notice that community matters, and people are inherently social. We learn through social means, and so that's what initially drew us to Schoology. It seemed that way, but now that we've lived with it, we've been with it, it has certainly been that. So, to give an example from my classes, obviously I want my students to be thinking about their own thinking, to be regulating their own learning. And so I've got activities and journals and things like that where they're doing that, but I really want to see them take the next step to what we call co-regulation. I want to see them helping each other think about their own thinking, and then maybe eventually, maybe someday we get to this socially shared, this idea that there's an obligation I have to my learning community, where my students are looking out for each other and really trying to make sure everyone understands. And so we've been able to use Schoology as a platform for that. As I have group projects, I always give them a digital form, even though they're on campus. I give them a place on my website for them to collaborate, whether it's a discussion forum or things like that. And we've got them using. I often use a ticket out the door or an exit ticket, depending on what area you're from. You might use these, and traditionally we do them on a 3x5 card, but you can use it in Schoology as well. And what's really cool is you start to see students answering each other's questions as they post either a clearest or a muddiest point after a lesson. And then I can look at it and see all that text that they've been writing back and forth and see, are there any gaps in their understanding? And I start to see them helping each other, which is really exciting. And then when we meet again, face to face, we can start to make sure everyone's in the same playing field. And now students are appreciating each other's expertise as well, and starting to know, hey, this guy's the go-to guy for this, and they start to identify their own place within the classroom. That's a really special thing.
Justin's talking a lot to his classroom experiences, which I think do model even and represent many of our faculty now that are using Schoology. But we also have online experiences that are going on that are really taking it to the next level. We produce online classes, and one of them is a Hebrew, an ancient language study of Hebrew. And one of the ways that professor was struggling with how he was teaching his students is they can't see the language, they can't hear it, right? It's all just text, and maybe he could get some videos or whatever. We used Big Blue Button with that professor. He gave classroom time every Thursday night, recorded it with the 7-day feature or whatever, so that his students could watch it over the next week. And he did synchronous learning with his students. And that's just, again, a representation of several other experiences with our online courses where we've got them learning together, even digitally. Justin's taking it in the classroom and he's taking it out of the classroom, and this is just completely in the digital classroom. And that leads to our last point of meshing digital learning with the real world. We feel that they are integrated. Digital learning and the real world today, it's our jobs. We come to work every day and we work digitally, even though we're in a physical location. So we want to take that to the next level and really kind of mesh those experiences. And we're modeling that in our jobs with our faculty and the faculty for the students. The next slide is going to show an example where our faculty are doing this themselves, right? We have the students doing it, but this slide you're seeing now is our updates page in our faculty eCampus guide, where the faculty ask their questions and respond to one another. I'll tell you, in probably the first 4 here, I've only responded to one of those faculty members, right? They've responded to each other. They're liking each other's posts and things like that. So social learning's happening throughout the gamut here at LBC, and we're really thrilled to see the improvements we've made there.
I have a question about this particular slide, just because social learning can be an intimidating concept for some of our instructors. I remember talking to a group of higher ed instructors, and I was talking to them about the aspect of a discussion forum, and one of them got concerned about having to actually respond to students in a discussion forum, something that maybe you and I would take for granted, but this was actually a concern for her. How how would you help an instructor who might feel intimidated by this social learning aspect? How would you encourage them in taking first steps?
This is Will here. I've heard that myself, Adam. I've talked with the faculty who have done that. Now, I know I just was listening to Justin this week, so I want to tee him up for this one. I think he's been working with a professor who's been dealing with this.
Yeah, we certainly came across it all the time. I mean, that's just inherent in as people are not sure what to do with online learning. I do teach online as well, and as an instructional designer, I work with professors one-on-one to design fully online courses. And expectations can be different from place to place, but one of our expectations at LBC is that we do everything we can. We bend over backwards to produce community and personalized experiences online. It's a high priority for us. We don't want a glorified grader kind of professor, and you may have had those online experiences, you know, if you've been an online student. We really don't want that. And so I will say this, it is a slowish process. You've got to walk alongside people, because here we are, Will and I are younger, and here we show up on the scene, especially for faculty who have been here at this institution much longer than we have, and they've been teaching much longer than we have, and they're experts in, you know, social work or whatever. They've got their PhD there, but they may have never had any pedagogical training. And so here come these young guys, hey, you need to change this and change this. You have to tread carefully. We found a lot of individual conversations have gone a long way in doing that, and really helping them understand that, like we mentioned before, that doing digital learning is about shifting our understanding of education to a focus on the learner rather than our content. And I can't stress that enough. That is absolutely massive for us. It's taken us a while, and I think that's something, especially for higher ed, that's a shift we're seeing, because we're in the information age, and why should I go watch someone lecture and go into debt until I'm middle-aged, you know, to do that when I can get on YouTube? We must provide something better. And so that's a shift. That's kind of what we're trying to portray as well, that this is about a pedagogical shift to learner-centered instruction rather than content-centered instruction, because you can go get content so easily.
Right. Awesome. So the fourth one, and I know that we're running out of time here, but the fourth one was putting innovation always within reach. What was the significance of this level for you guys?
Well, one of the tough things was, you know, before with Moodle, it was really unattainable, and people didn't feel that they felt like it was some foreign language. They felt it was a software beyond them. One of the things that we're really trying to do is bring to them pedagogical stuff that's in layman's terms, that is helpful, and that's directly related to what they're trying to get to. I'll be honest, I'm not going to take my first-time Schoology user professor and give them some sort of interesting structure for a project-based learning environment in a discussion with an embedded Google Doc. Like, it's not something that's going to work for that faculty member. So we're really trying to say, okay, where are you and what can we do for you? The examples of this in practice are, you know, years before we had to do tech support with our summer training. Our summer trainings were dedicated to, all right, meet with us, sit with us, here's how to click there, do this, come over here, what's your question, what broke? 2016 was a great summer for us, where we just spoke to pedagogy. How can you teach with mobile technologies better? How can you use the grade book to improve your classroom and management? How can all these different topics that we addressed really just kind of said, okay, we're going to be the filters for you of the complicated stuff. Sit with us, listen to us, and we're going to help you kind of take the next step, just with a simple step, you know, for you. Put your grading categories in and weight them. There we go, step one. And for some people, that's like, really? Come on, that's simple. And other people's, that is innovation. And I've been just as happy to work with those folks who come through it and smile on the other end as I am with the person who is doing that project-based learning experience where they're trying to integrate a discussion in Google embedded document. It's both successful, and they're both examples of how we're meeting people where they are to help them innovate and move forward.
Yeah, I would say we've been doing a lot of research lately, and one framework I would really recommend if you're considering any sort of innovation, new initiative like shifting to another LMS, Rogers' diffusion of innovations theory has been one that it's more recent for us to kind of stumble across, but it has been incredibly helpful, and it describes characteristics of that make an innovation likely to be adopted by faculty. And so if we look at kind of some of those things, how do we get faculty to adopt this? Just to give you a few, they need to feel like they can do it. they need to feel like it's within their capabilities. They need to feel like your institution is going to commit long-term to this. That's important. If I'm a faculty member, I've been around for a while, I've seen a few things come and go and fail, and I need to know if I'm going to put effort into it, this thing's going to stay. I think as well that faculty need to see that this sort of a shift towards pedagogy rather than tech, just by itself or for tech's sake, is something that's consistent with the missions and goals of higher education or K-12 education. It is something that education's always been about or been about for many years. And it's just funny, this is just consistent. We haven't changed. This is who we always have been. We're just trying to do it better. Mm-hmm. That's been a key for us.
Yeah.
And so once we've got that initial buy-in, like Will was saying, start small. Here's a discussion forum. Here's an assignment. Now we've got people doing collaborative note-taking through an embedded Google Doc, in an assignment. And one thing Schoology does so well is it gives you a platform to plug and play third-party tools, unlike our other LMS. And just to reiterate, that piece of research I was referencing was Everett Rogers' Diffusion of Innovations Theory. It's a wonderful book. The most recent version's 2003, I think. Highly recommend that if you're looking at, what does it mean to bring innovation, and it's often been used for technology as well. So I think appropriate here.
Well, and that pulls us around to our, I guess, last way to level up. And this is a little bit, we leave it for last because it's kind of where we are. We're taking a step now. Some of the things you've seen us do so far, we've implemented. We've seen improvements on. Our faculty are coming to things more frequently. They are coming to things in the summer more frequently because we've valued them. We have made them easier to attain. We provided web options and face-to-face options. And we have locations in several different states, even international. And so that's really important that we make sure that it's as democratic as possible. We want to put it out there for everyone. Now, number 5 here, encourage sustained reflection on pedagogy and practice. I'm again going to tee Justin up for this because they've got some things that are coming forward, but I'll just say real quick, this is what I've gone through as a metamorphosis of a practitioner. I was the tech support. I was the person running the LMS just to do techie stuff. And Justin and those guys in my office have kind of mentored me and pulled me into this idea of how can I make sure that my tech tools are educational? How am I not just belaboring someone with something new they can do and make it pedagogically relevant? And as I reflect on that, I'm experiencing this. And so, Justin's kind of working on a program coming up for us that's going to take us to the next level at LBC.
Yeah, so and again, to reiterate, this is next level stuff. Our first version of what I'm about to describe will hopefully be operational by July, but realistically, to really see something become a well-oiled machine, it's going to be a couple years to do what I'm about to explain. So the task that was given to us by our director was to create a comprehensive faculty development program for onboarding new faculty. We have tons of adjunct faculty. How do we have in higher education, you have a lot of adjuncts for teaching for 6 different institutions. How do I show them this is what it means to teach for LBC and to give them our culture? And so the first piece is really related to onboarding, and we thought, well, what's the best way to teach people how to use the LMS? And because many of our adjuncts are not familiar with this. So we would like to use scenario-based learning, kind of weave a narrative, so that coupled with all the instruction, they're placed in scenarios. Hey, a student just messaged you. How do you respond to it? And to kind of weave a narrative out of it, so it's in a situated context. And so it's one less hurdle they have to go through 6 days later when they're teaching the course, and they have to go back and, oh, how did I do that again? Well, they've already kind of practiced it. The second piece is just-in-time training. So a whole suite of resources. Once professors have gone through that onboarding training, to go, and we'll have all sorts of different items. Quick how-to videos, and hey, here's how you create a discussion forum in case you forgot. Those sort of resources, all the way to self-paced training modules on instructor presence in online courses and more advanced things like that. So we're going to kind of have a whole full suite, and we're always going to be trying to create something dynamic and comprehensive there. Finally, the thing I'm most excited about is to create ongoing, like we said here, sustained reflection on pedagogy and practice. So we've taken the idea of a faculty learning community, which you may or may not be familiar with, but we've begun to send out surveys and identify faculty members across our disciplines who want to be mentors. And they say, hey, I can do this really well, and I want to help other people do that. And we're creating a platform for a number, I'm not sure how many at once yet, but a number of ongoing faculty learning communities where 5, 6, 10 faculty members identify a shared problem of practice related to digital learning, and then they all put their heads together and they work on that. And the beautiful thing about that is our office is going to provide the platform, but it's the faculty leading the faculty. And we may step in and lead those from time to time as well, but we really want faculty mentors to be leading these ideas. And the whole concept is that we're never done. We're lifelong learners, and we're never going to rest on our laurels. We're always trying to be the best teachers we can be. And so allowing them to put their brilliant minds together to solve problems that they all share will hopefully draw our own faculty community together as well and break down some of those silos that can happen amongst our disciplines. And so that's our big vision for what we'd like this to become, in addition to the just-in-time resources and kind of that onboarding, here's how to use Schoology within something of a narrative.
And just for clarification, that is just in 2 words, not just in time, right?
There you go. Although if you want to call it just in time, I'm not going to complain.
I think when we were talking earlier, I think this was one of the things that I was most excited to hear about the practice that you guys are undertaking there, because the more that we as instructors, we as system admins, even as students, if we're reflecting on what's happening, I think we get better outcomes, and it's exciting to see you guys moving that direction. Now, for the sake of the webinar, I just want to recap the 5 things really quickly, just in a short amount of time. First off, they were really wanting to empower themselves so that they can empower others. And once that empowerment happens, you start seeing students expecting more, things like social learning, things like doing tasks that were never before possible. And as they continue to reflect upon their process, they're continuing to make great strides. I really appreciate, Justin and Will, all of your time that you took to put together these slides and these thoughts, and even taking the time today to talk with us. I know there's a couple of questions that have come up that I want to make sure that we get to answer. So one of them comes from Amy, and she's really wanting to know about suggestions that you have to help shift the culture, whether it's in like a summer training or professional development throughout the year. She makes a specific comment that most of her professors go missing in action over the summer and don't even check their email. So what will be some of your suggestions to help with that kind of transition?
First and foremost, Amy, we feel you. We're not trying to laud ourselves here as having a perfect system. We have plenty that do that as well. And one of the things that's interesting about our environment, and typical, I guess, in higher ed, but we probably have less than half, or we have a lot of adjuncts. Let's put it that way. We have a lot of adjuncts because we service so many different states that our full-time faculty are mostly here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, but anybody who else is either a part-time faculty member or adjunct. And so connecting with those folks is quite difficult. They just don't either pay attention to their institution email, or they, they're on their own time. It's understandable for the summer to want some break, but at least personally, and Justin's got a few thoughts on this, but personally, the number one thing for getting the faculty to engage with professional development is to, I think, boil it down and keep it consistent. Much like we were talking about the students, getting them to kind of communicate with us through updates or through Twitter if you're going outside of the LMS. Make it easier for them to connect with you more frequently. And of course, they have to want to. There's got to be a way that maybe you can motivate them, have something once a year where you give out giveaways and whatever. But our faculty campus guide is there for the faculty to talk to us anytime, any day. And so being available to them and kind of then leading them in with something like, hey, by the way, if you post there, you're going to get my response. That's really important. And that's what we want them to do with their students. So it makes sense we should model that with them. Justin?
Yeah, well, yeah. And to kind of piggyback a little bit off that is that it's taken us a while. Our office had to go through that culture shift as well, where people thought that we were a place to go to learn about pedagogy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So that was one piece. But another one that's been helpful for us to accommodate even people here in our Lancaster campus is to every time we do a workshop, we do it live, we record it as well, and we've intentionally designed the workshops. We always try to do very hands-on kind of things where they can work on their own courses while they're with us and implement some of these pieces. We do it in ways where the online participants, we have a number of faculty in the DC region as well, and some in Philly, and so as they're remote, or even people didn't feel like coming to campus and they're a couple miles away but they're sitting in their living room, we have tried to create a platform, and it's really been successful in some cases, to have them participate live and to draw them in just as if they're in the room with us.
Yep.
So to provide that avenue to say, hey, you don't have to drive in, but we think this is valuable for you, especially as during the summer you're starting to redesign some of your classes, make some improvements hopefully, and so to provide a more convenient medium has been helpful for us.
Sorry about that, I was on mute. With that said, we actually are out of time. We have a couple more questions that have come in. We're going to respond to those one-off. Again, Justin and Will, thank you so much for your time talking us through the various ways that you guys have leveled up there at Lancaster. I hope everyone was able to take something from this webinar and make it impactful. Just to let you know, we will be sending out some follow-up emails that will have the recording of this webinar for you to be able to listen to and be able to access. And if anything, if you want to know more about Schoology, we can also be sending out some emails that will give you an opportunity to maybe see a demonstration of the actual product and what difference we can make with you. With that said, thank you again, everyone, for being here today. Have a great rest of your day.